podcast.
Bring your friends.
Recording.
Recording.
We're live.
Yeah, we have to tell everybody we're recording. We have an intro. You know that.
I know we have an intro, but it's nice to see when people shut the fuck up. Making me talk. Kirk Noland comes to the podcast, everybody.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Kirk,
Thank
I know
you for
I asked
having me.
you earlier.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. I know I asked you earlier everything that you do, but I think it's not even enough the amount of things that you do. So first of all, thank you for making time for being here.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I see a lot of your work, and it's really cool, and it also feels like it's pretty honest.
Well, we were talking about this. We were talking about this earlier, me, you, and Eric. And I came from a generation of comics that truth and honesty really was a part of that whole program. You know, it was about speaking up and saying things that other people would be afraid to say or afraid to talk about or afraid to confront. And especially in these times, these dark Orwellian times that we're living right now, you know, you need people speaking up and you know, speaking truth to power. It's important more than ever.
I agree, actually. Yeah.
Are you tell me about Detroit. Like, what is it about Detroit that, because you seem to really love like where you're from. We were talking about Springfield earlier, and it's
right.
Like it's like through what you're doing, I feel like you really love that place. And the reason I ask that is because one of the things that I learned recently with certain artists, and I look at things in a different way now. We have a friend of ours called Adam Gable that he's in a movie called Tomorrow's Today.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said is like, you have to look at the movie through the eyes of like someone that grew up there, and hey, this is what they're showing you. And it's pretty cool because you do something similar.
Oh, thanks. Well, Detroit was the city that birthed me as an artist. I started there, God, so long ago, it seems like. And I started as a comedian at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. That's where I started. And I remember the first open mic that I went to at Mark Ridley's, and Tim Allen was on that show. And it was an open mic, but he was like the closing act that came out for the open mic to like work out his new stuff, This was his place to do it. So it's been a long time. That's the place that birthed me. And finally, I got to go all over the world as a comedian. I got to headline Las Vegas. And then in 2015, I contracted endocarditis, which is a very serious heart infection, a bacterial infection. And it killed me. It really killed me. I mean, a mailman found me the next day laying face down in the snow. I had been there all night. And by the time they got me to the hospital, the doctors basically said, he's dead. He's 80 degrees. Dead people are warmer than that. So he won't make it through the night. And if he makes it through the night, then he'll be a vegetable for the rest of his life because he's had a severe amount of brain damage. So he's probably not coming back from this. And that was 7 years. That was 7 years ago. And I call it the rebirth. My rebirth anniversary is coming up on November 19th. And it'll be 8 years that I've been resurrected and reborn onto this. I call it this floating mental institution in space, because that's what it is. It's insanity every day. And
so let me ask you this real quick. Can you explain to people what is that is that you had, and how is it that you caught it? Or not
endocarditis? Endocarditis is an infection of the heart wall, and it's caused by bacterial infection. And what they said that I contracted was staph bovine. How I got that, they don't know how I got that. I could have gotten it from infected meat. I could have gotten it from a number of different ways that it could have happened. Okay. But once it had infected my heart wall, I didn't know it. And then it got into my bloodstream, and then it got into my brain. And once it did that, then it sent me into septic shock, which that's what happened 7 years ago. I just went into septic shock on a walk, just went out for a walk. And it was on Christmas, by the way. I just went for a walk on Christmas, and I woke up weeks later in a coma in the hospital. It was like an episode. It was like the dead zone. I tell people it felt like the dead zone. I just woke up sometime later and just didn't even know what had happened. It was just a scorched earth, I call it. It's just scorched earth of your life. It's just everything comes crashing down, and you can't seem to pick up all the pieces fast enough to put it all back together again, especially when you're older. You know, when those things happen to people when they're older, and they're a lot more set into a career that they've spent their whole lives building and cultivating, and all of a sudden it's just gone overnight. It's a really hard thing to try to wrap your head around, especially your damaged head. I had such damage done to my brain and my heart and my body from all that had happened. So in
What
these
did you do to
last
get back?
I'm sorry.
What did you do to like come
That's
back?
that's what I'm doing with this new show that I talk about Detroit, because I lived in Los Angeles for 12 or 13 years as a comedian and working to be a showrunner out in Los Angeles. And so when I left Detroit, we were called the murder capital of the country. I mean, we had been called the murder capital country for decades, and we were proud of it. Like we were talking off camera from the show. We were laughing. You were laughing about being proud of coming from the meth capital of the country. That's how we felt about being in Detroit. We were like, it was the only thing we could be proud of, that we were like the most violent motherfuckers on the face of the planet. We were like, we're number one. And we would prove it when we'd win a baseball game or a football game. It made national news because we flipped shit over and burned things. We fired guns off. We rioted. Yeah, I mean,
bro, we don't do that here.
We didn't have anything else to be proud of, so we were like, well, we'll be proud of being the toughest people on the planet. We're Detroiters, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so here I come back to Detroit after being gone for so long, because I was one of those kids who wanted to escape his hometown. I didn't realize I was trying to escape my problems and running off to the place with the most problems in the world, by the way. Los Angeles was not really the answer to my problems, and it just made my issues even worse. And so by the time I got back to Detroit, I started looking around and I'm like, what in the hell happened to Detroit? And I mean, Detroit is having a renaissance like you can't even imagine. It is becoming, I call it the city of phoenixes, because Detroit just keeps rising up from the ashes and being reborn into something new. And when I tell people I'm having a love affair with my city, it's because I'm rising up from the ashes and being reborn into something new. I was a comedian for most of my adult life, and now the pandemic has cemented that I can't do that anymore, because with endocarditis, my immune system is compromised. And so I can't live the same normal life everybody else lives in an endemic, and that's what we're in now. And so this is never going away. You're seeing all the different variations of the virus and all the things that are happening. So for someone like me, I was like, well, that's the end of my career. I'll never be able to go back to doing that in that way. So what do I do now? How do I continue this progress that doctors and everybody told me I would be a vegetable, I'd be in a bed, and I'm not? And part of that was what I'm showing people now. It's building a process of different disciplines that I have learned over decades of time being an artist. It's a combination of being a stand-up, of being a video producer that I had been in Los Angeles, a creative director, and then taking all of those different disciplines and wrapping them into my martial arts skills and creating a show that shows people how to vlog as an art form, sort of like Tai Chi with video. Slow movements, things that help you keep your mind and your body motivated together as one. Because the only way you come back from something as traumatic as what we have all now been subjected to, which is a worldwide plague, there are people right now that can't even still come out of their house, still are afraid and terrified of what's going on. And I was one of those people, 7 years ago, when all this hit me. It was like, it shattered me. I was this public person for so long, and then I couldn't even leave my apartment. I couldn't even go anywhere. I couldn't even, unless I was going to go get something to eat down at the grocery store down the street, other than that, I was trapped in my house. And
So
so
what?
the only way to survive that kind of solitude or
Mhm,
that kind of loneliness, because there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. And it's the
mhm.
long walk from loneliness to solitude that you find out what that difference is. So it was in those years of such loneliness that I couldn't get out of that, that I resorted to my video skills and started building sets around my house and started vlogging. And the reason I started vlogging was I had to get all this shit out, all
Yeah.
of these fears, all of this
Mhm.
stuff that was all pent up inside of me, along with all of these drugs they had me on for so long. I was on
Yeah.
all these drugs that I couldn't think straight. I couldn't focus. I wasn't even the same person. It just, they turned me into a whole different person. And it wasn't until a therapist I was seeing trying to repair myself said to me, you know, why don't you bring a camera into therapy? And I was like, what do you mean bring a camera? And she goes, well, this is how you've communicated most of your life. In fact, you've recorded yourself over decades of time being a performer. I would always record my shows, go back to
Mhm.
the hotel room, watch my stuff. You know, you guys are
Yeah.
comics, you
You
understand,
listen to
right?
it out. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was already in this self-reflective frame of mind without even really knowing it, until
Mhm.
she got me to bring the camera into therapy. And that just changed everything, because it gave me a new artistic outlet to now start to heal with. Because
Mhm.
now I could vlog and I could look at my progress a year later and see the person I was compared to the person I had become. And
Okay.
I had not really looked at it that way before. And so that's when, coming back to Detroit, I started rolling all of these disciplines into one. And then deciding as I got older, I'm older now, I'm in my 60s now. I was like, you know, this isn't a, it's not about me anymore. I had my time in the sun. I started thinking, what's my muse? And my next muse was my city, because it's just been amazing. And every day it's just becoming more amazing. Detroit has been built a riverfront that is second to none in the nation. And what
Mhm.
they're building now is 28 miles of greenway, pathways, and bikeways around the city that circles the city and brings all of the suburbs back into the city in
Huh.
Mhm.
different greenways.
Well,
And
let
Really?
me
so
let me
they're literally creating the next mobility city of the United States. Go ahead, Eric.
yeah, let me ask you, what did the doctor say? Because they said you was gonna be a vegetable. So why how do they explain you not being, the brain damage you're supposed to cure? How do they explain that?
Uh, I, I don't know. I had a lot of brain damage. No, I have to say, because I don't have a lot of, I lost a lot of my memory. And
I
so
see. Okay.
even in the course of these 7 years, if you ask me about things, you know, in year one, I don't have a lot of memory about things. Even my wife was talking to me about some things that we did last year, because we're going to go up north this year. And she's going, oh, you remember when we stopped at this place? I go, no, I don't remember
But
any of that.
recording helps you
So I
remember.
think, yeah, I think it's I think a combination of what happened to me was this brain damage that they said wouldn't be able to be repaired. I think people need to take things sometimes when professionals say it to them, and think about what you said, Eric, by the way, in the beginning of this conversation that was off camera, and that is the capacity of what you can do for yourself to make things happen. This
Mhm.
happened because I got on a bike. I started really being disciplined and looking at my art form in a way that really helped calm my mind, helped
Mhm.
start making me remember things, because I was recording my history. And I think, not just because of an accident this is happening, I think everybody should be recording their own personal history. They are, in a way, because you're doing it through social media. You're
Yeah.
storyboarding your life every day by
Mhm.
everything that you're putting out there. But I think by vlogging about your experiences, not only are you creating a personal history for yourself in the event something horrible like what happened to me happens.
Mhm.
If I had not been recording my life as a comedian and I had not had all those breadcrumbs, I don't think I could have put my mind back together again like this, because I wouldn't have had a map for it. But
I
I was
see.
able to see
Okay.
who I was. I was able to see the accomplishments I had done. I was able to
Mhm.
grieve over things that I had lost. but still be proud of the things that had happened. And more importantly, whatever happened to me, it did not destroy the things that helped me to excel to places like Los Angeles and Las Vegas. And it was that discipline and that internal fortitude to want to keep going in the face of everything saying that you can't do it. I was like, I'm going to get better. I'm going to prove to myself that I can do this at this age, because what else can you do? Once you reach the gates of hell, there's nowhere to go after that. You either walk through the gates or you decide, you either walk through the fucking gates or you decide to man up and do what it fucking takes to get there. And I've had enough drill sergeants and directors and other people and inspiring people that I have met throughout my life as a performer that I've worked with, that I went, this is possible. I can do this. So I hope I answered your question with that long answer.
How did you get started with it? You just one day you just like, hey, I'm gonna go to the open mic.
Oh, with comedy, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I know this story. I know the story because I've recorded it. so I'm going to tell you the story that I know because I've recorded it and I've seen it now over and over.
Okay.
But I wouldn't have been able to, but that's the point. I wouldn't have been able to answer that question before. And I think if I hadn't kept a history like I did, just out of accident, just being a performer, just recording all the time, and trying to improve my show.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had that, but I know that I started because I took a date to Mark Ridley's comedy castle.
Oh my God.
I took her there because I wanted to.
Do you remember the opener?
Yeah. No, but I took her to the comedy castle on a whim, and at the end of the night, we watched all the comics, and at the end of the night, they went, well, if you want to be a comic, we have an open mic night. You just sign up on the list and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, I'm going to try to do that. And it took me a couple of months of courage till I finally did it.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, went and did it. And then, the rest is history. And I was lucky because I started at a time where, there were only a handful of major comedy clubs in the country. That was it. There was no road.
Yeah.
There was nothing. There was nothing going on like that. And so I started right in the early days, and maybe a few years into it, I was working in a warehouse, and a few years into it, I finally decided to quit my job and go into comedy. And comedy at that moment started really blowing up, like really blowing up. It went
What
from
year
five.
was it?
Oh, I don't know. Early 90s. It was just blowing up out of control.
Yeah.
And you went from 5 clubs to like 500 clubs, like in just no time at all. I mean, they were paying openers $1,000 a week and airfare.
Wow.
That openers got $1,000 a week and airfare.
Jeez.
That's how limited the pool was of talent. And they had to get whoever they could. That's why someone like Jimmy Brogan, the great comic Jimmy Brogan, who used to cast for The Tonight Show, even today, he's like the greatest MC you'll ever see in the world. Tom Dreesen, another great performer, a legendary performer. Tom Dreesen, who's in his 80s now, who's done, 80 appearances on The Tonight Show, or Letterman, over 100 on The Tonight Show, still going. He's like the godfather of comedy. He's the perfect MC. He still MCs today because he started in that era where opening the show was a really important skill set. It was something that people really learned and honed. And there was such a small pool of people that those guys got paid a lot of money. And then comedy got bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon the money went down, down, down.
Yeah.
Damn.
But it's still a valuable skill.
It is. Yeah.
Being an opener.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
not an opener, but to host a show.
I enjoy hosting.
I think the people who look at being openers as the most serious position in the show will remember that for the rest of their lives, because you always are an opener. Are you kidding me? When you start working auditoriums and theaters where you're opening for a big act, there ain't nobody opening up for you. You're walking out on that stage cold.
Yeah.
There ain't no one starting shit for you. You have to go out and grab that audience from the very beginning. And that's where those skills come into place. The people who take opening seriously, take MCing seriously, who never see MCing or opening as beneath them, to do, they are the ones who excel later on in life as artists, I think, because they learn from tough times of opening shows, how difficult it can be.
People will also give you, or you can create like your own shows too. Like look at
Yeah.
Roy Wood Jr. and Aries Spears with This Is Not Happening.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
That show was so
Yeah.
good.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if you've seen it, but God, it's so good. It
Hmm.
was so good.
Yeah,
And it was
Roy Wood Jr. I know him, and he's phenomenal. He's just a phenomenal artist,
Oh
and a
he.
good example of an artist who is. Every time I worked with him, he's always writing, always writing. It's like
Oh.
you just, when you run across people, like I used to work with Richard Jenny a lot in Las Vegas, and you
Hmm.
try to get Rich to go out and go have a good time with you. And now we know a lot of things with depression were involved with Rich, but he was always writing. He was always working. He was always honing his talent. I'll tell you a great Richard Jenny story that I made it into a video because it's a really great lesson for comics. And Richard Jenny is one of the comics who really changed me as an artist
Mhm.
because he got me to see layers. And when I became an editor and a video producer, I realized how important that first lesson about layers was as a comic. I think comics don't see themselves when they hit that stage in layers. And what I mean by layers is Rich was a guy that when he hit the stage, everything on that stage was a layer to be used in the canvas that he was working on. And a
Oh.
lot of comics don't see that. The stool was a layer, the
Mhm.
microphone was a layer, the stand was a layer, the curtains were a layer. Everything became things that were usable to tell that story. He was a master storyteller. I don't think there's a better storyteller than Richard Jenny. And we ended up doing a radio program, such like we're doing right now, a podcast, right? But it was this
Oh.
old guy, old AM station in Las Vegas, right? And it's just me and Rich early in the morning, and we show up, and this fucking guy, I don't even know. He'd been doing radio forever. He wasn't even interested in having us there whatsoever. And it was that's like that old Saturday Night Live sketch where the radio guy is like talking to him. He's going, and then he's just throwing in carts and he's doing whatever. That's what we were involved in. And so this was my opportunity, I thought, to start asking a genius, because I thought Rich was a genius, start
Yeah.
asking him things on what I could learn from him. And
Mhm.
so here's one of my questions that I said to Rich. Rich, when we work together and I watch your show and I watch my show, I see the same kind of premises. I mean, we touch on some of the same things, even talk about religion and different edgy topics. But somehow when I watch you do it, it's like a whole nother world. I mean, it's just like there's so much to it. Can you explain to me like what that process is? And he said to me, most comics, when they're coming up with a joke, they figure out once they learn how to write and stuff, they figure out the punchline. After about 3-4 punchlines, they go, I got it. I'm done. I got the punchline. They're making themselves laugh. They're making their friends laugh. They got it
Mhm.
all figured out. Then it isn't for months down the line that they start running into other people who thought up the same concept, got the same punchline, on and on
Mhm.
and on. He goes, when I write a joke, I'm looking for punchline 25. I'm looking for punchline 50. I'm looking for punchline 60. I'm looking for the places that other people will never go to just because they're too lazy. They're sitting in their hotel room smoking weed or drinking or partying all
Mhm.
night or whatever, or hanging out with their friends, going to the movies. I'm looking for the punchlines everyone else are lazy to look at. And I'm looking at the premise like a house. Most people walk up, they see the front of the house, but they don't ever ask themselves the questions about, well, what's the backyard look like? What's in the basement? What's in the attic? How many kids are there? It's the same thing that actors do when they're devising a character. They go into a
Yeah.
history. They go into like really going into all the layers of what that is. And I had never run into anybody like that had done that and looked at the world like that. And that's why his act was so, it was a joy to watch every day. It was a pure artist because every time I worked with him, it was different. It was amazing. It was like watching jazz when I would watch Richard Jenny work. And now you realize he was tortured. you know, by a lot of things. And but that, you know, mad genius goes hand in hand with that sometimes. So
Definitely, because you can look at Robin Williams. He had a lot of issues,
absolutely, yeah.
but it just seems like the more issues you have, the funnier you are. I don't know if
God
that's.
damn it.
Am I wrong? Richard Pryor. He had a lot of issues and
Oh my
funnier than
God.
hell.
Oh my God.
Am I
Oh my
wrong?
And
God.
I don't think that's always, I mean, it seems like the case for real legendary geniuses. But I
Oh
think
yeah.
out of that pain, I think, and this is kind of circling back to what we're talking about in the beginning of my story. I
Mhm.
think that kind of pain is what that is the well that you dig from when you really want, when you're really trying to present the most honest representation of your art that you can, you know? And I
True.
think when you're digging deep into places that scare the shit out of you as an artist, that's usually where the real magic ends up happening and starts to
Mhm.
unfold. And it gives you a really self-reflective view of your own soul. And sometimes people don't like the view that they have of their own soul, like Richard Pryor didn't, which is why he tried to set himself on fire, which is why Richard Jennings put a gun to his head, and which is why I'm a suicide survivor myself. Because
Mm.
after what happened to me with endocarditis, the next 11 months of my life was just a scorched earth. It was done. And they're just feeding me medication, telling me that if I just keep taking all this medication, everything's going to be better. And that medication just sent me deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole till one day I'm sitting under a tree with a gut full of pills waiting to die. And that was my
Mhm.
second time at meeting death and coming back from it. And so when I came back from those two events, I'm like, I got nothing to lose. So this next 7 years has just been, I'm going to build the life that I want in these 7 years. Because honestly, I didn't think I'd be here. I thought the pandemic would have killed me already. Honestly, I thought that when the pandemic hit, I thought this is it for me. It'll be over.
What
And
they
but I
have
had,
you on, if you remember by chance.
oh, a plethora of different drugs because they told me my brain chemistry had shifted because of that
Mhm.
bacteria that had invaded my brain and caused all that. So they had to balance my brain, is what they were telling me, and get me back to normal. I don't know what
Oh.
normal is supposed to mean because I didn't feel normal when I was a comedian. So I didn't know what they wanted me to get back to normal to. So the drug that really sent me over the edge was a drug called Seroquel. And they had me on
Ah.
Seroquel because of you know, the brain thing that happened. What it did was it ignited all. The therapist explained it the best. She said, you were an entertainer your whole life and you ran from all of these issues and problems that you didn't want to face, and now this event that has now happened in your life has now ripped off all the scabs of all those old wounds that you had, and you're on fire now. You're just on fire, and you don't have the mental capacity to control any of it, and so you're losing it. And so coming back from all that, that's why I'm, you know, in this spot now, and
Yeah.
thinking to myself as I produce and create this show based on all the disciplines that I've learned over time using the city as my muse. I do it because I remember that there are people like me who are trapped and they can't get out. And the one thing I learned about my brain and about everybody's brain in these 7 years is that you can start it over again. It's like a hard drive. You can reboot that motherfucker anytime you want. And so when the doctors were saying I was going to be a vegetable, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be a vegetable. I'm going to reboot this hard drive and I'm going
Mhm.
to figure out a way to do this. And I started vlogging in my hospital bed. You know, I started
Oh,
vlogging day one in intensive care. You know, my wife brought me my laptop and I started vlogging so that I could remember where I was and where I've come to now. And
Mm.
so that's my story, brothers. And so I'm trying to show other people some of the things that I have done along the way because I see it now in my feeds. Comedians that are my age
Mhm.
who've lost their careers now. They've lost them. The pandemic is just, that's it. It's over. Honestly, if you're at my age and you aren't on cruise ships by now or in Las Vegas and stuff, you tell me where else you're going to make a really, really great living, like a really great living. And if your standard of living was already at a certain place because of the decades of time that
Oh,
you've put
yeah.
into this career. The pandemic just shut all that down for a lot of people, just lost everything. And so
Mhm.
there where I was 7 years ago, trying to figure out how do I pick up all these pieces and start all over again? Well,
Mhm.
follow me every week on Facebook Live when I vlog and I use my gimbal poles, and I will show you how to quiet your mind, how to use a gimbal pole like a martial arts staff to not only protect yourself, but to quiet your mind and to film and to record your own history as you begin to build a process of creating your very own documentary. Everybody's doing it already. They just don't know how to put those pieces together. Like I didn't know how to put all my memories back together again after I died. And I had to find a way to do that. And I used video to do that.
Nice.
Nice.
We were talking off the air about the songs that you got in the back. Can you tell me that story again? Because that's pretty cool.
The signs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the signs.
all the stuff that you got in the back. How is it that you
Oh
inspired?
yeah. I mean, it's a collection of all the different posters and memorabilia that I've gathered over my decades of time working as a
Mhm.
comedian and things that have inspired me. So that in my studio, I'm reminded, like I'm a big fan of Einstein. So there's an Einstein over here in the corner, a big painting of Einstein that I
There you go.
love
That's
that I
good. I
that I
like that.
found somewhere and collect. And so it's just a collection of all kinds of things. The sign that you're seeing behind me that says the lab
Yeah.
was a sign that was created for me by a friend after I came back to Detroit in the first year. Once I started kind of putting things back together again, I
Mhm.
knew I wasn't going to be a comedian anymore. So I was like, I want to do something that's going to really help heal my soul. And I can tell everybody the one thing that'll help you come back from anything
Mhm.
that takes you that far down into the darkness is service to others.
Mhm.
Service to others will keep you focused on the future and not ruminating on the past. And so, what I decided to do was become a teacher. And so, I started teaching in the inner city. And a friend of mine made this sign for me for my students in their music booth. We hung it in a music booth that we all built together so that they could,
Oh.
because in Detroit they all want to be hip hop artists, rap artists.
Oh.
So we created a sound booth for them so that they could like follow their passion and follow their dreams. And so
Mhm.
that's the memory of me being a teacher after I left after the pandemic. And so my walls just littered with things, George Carlin, all kinds of stuff. I have a Sam Kinison over here that's over you guys can't see, and a Steve Martin, and there's a great Eddie Izzard one that signed. I worked with Eddie Izzard and he signed one for me. And
Oh,
so
you
it's
work
just
with
this,
Eddie Izzard?
yeah, it's just
How
this fun memory lane of all these comics and people I've opened up for, like Tim Allen and other people, and
how
really
how
enjoyed my
was
life as an
yeah,
artist in that way, and had to transform into a different artist. And that's a hard thing for artists to do, to transform into
yeah.
something else. It's a hard thing for people to do. Change is the hardest thing for people.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And we
What
saw
was
that with the
what was like
pandemic.
working with Eddie?
Oh, he's nice. He's so nice. He's too smart to be around. I'd lose myself in conversations because he's just too fucking smart. I mean, he's just brilliant. And
I just
but there,
I know he did a bit about the Death Star and Star Wars, and every time I thought the joke was going to end, he just milked it out more.
you ever see him
You
talk
know how
about
he does? It's
language?
like that should be the punchline, and then he just keeps going, and then you think that's the punchline, and then he keeps going. And it's like he just milks it for everything it's worth. And I was like, damn, that is
Another
amazing how he
artist,
does that.
another artist who is masterful at layers. And if you look at Eddie's shows, it's just layers of everything. Richard Jenny, I remember a sound guy, one of the sound men at the Tropicana in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I would come down early all the time because Rich would do a sound check. And I would come down early to watch that sound check. And he would literally be walking the stage, going to the guy in the booth, hey, can you give me a little bit more tremble here? Can you bring it down over here? Hey, can we fix the light? So when I'm over in this corner, there's some more light on me. Can we put a gel on this one? I mean, he did all this for like 2 hours before the
Damn.
show. He really, I
Wow.
mean, this was a big deal. But you have to remember too, during the great Richard Jenny days, people like agents, managers, directors, producers, people were all flying in or driving their cars into Vegas just to see him. And so
Oh,
he knew that he was selling out shows in Las Vegas. He knew that. He wanted that show to be something. I remember the sound guy going, "This fucking guy. Every time he comes into town, I gotta do this and I gotta use this on my fucking balls all the time. This fucking guy, can't he just be like the rest of the comics and just do his fucking show? And I don't have to do this extra time." And I'm just like, don't you see? This is what real art is. It's about layers. It's not just about standing up at the microphone and telling some stories and jokes. He's thinking about every aspect about the presentation, everything, the lights, how it sounds, how everything is. I mean, as a video producer, that's what you're trying to do when you're creating anything. You're a director. You're bringing all those different art forms together, all into one, and you're corralling all those art forms and all those different artists all together and trying to find some common unity with it all so that it can all move forward into a coherent story that everybody's going to understand and love. And that's what looking at your show and looking at your life in layers is all about. And when one layer goes bad, if you've got other layers that are working, then you've got balance that's going to help even out the ones that are being destroyed. Does that make sense?
I honestly never heard of anybody doing that before, like, because I'll prep before a show, but it's normally not 2 hours. I'll go in for a half hour early and make sure everything's set up, do a sound check and all that. But 2 hours.
Panicky.
Of course, I wasn't setting up in like the Laugh Factory or anything else either. So
I'm panicky. I'll be there 2 hours.
Well, and when I say
I'm panicky.
And when I say 2 hours, and when I say 2 hours before the show, I'm not saying 2 hours he's standing on stage, but he's thinking about everything. He's 2 hours before the show thinking about the conversations that are going to happen in the green room, the people who are showing up. He's trying to make sure everything's working, everything's together. Even if you got an agent and a manager, the agents and manager are not there every single night to take care of those things for you. So it's your responsibility to take care of all those things. And again, I say this over and over to young artists who ask me the difference between headliners and openers and features. And I go, it's the layers. Look at the layers. Look at what people are willing to do in creating and crafting a show, not just saying shit into a microphone.
Yeah, that's a good tip because
Jake Johansson is another artist like that.
But, I'm not that detailed either. So
Jake Johansson is another great comic artist like that. If you know who Jake Johansson is, he was huge in the 80s and 90s, and a brilliant writer, has written for lots of shows. But he's another one like that. He crafted a persona, and Judy Tenuta was like that. Emo Phillips was like that. These are real artists that were really good. Gilbert Gottfried, crafting a character, layers of a character, an artist that is really crafted in layers, not just this guy standing up telling jokes, which I'm not against, by the way. I'm not against that at all. I'm just saying it in defining older artists who have to now I'm sorry, I'm looking for the word, have to translate a new art form for themselves after losing what they've had for so long that they think, how can I ever do this again? Well, you can do it by looking at another art form very seriously. And the reason I say vlogging as an art form is because we live in a world now where people vlog not as an art. They vlog as a way of getting attention and likes and rising up and getting rich. And at my age, I'm not relevant anymore. I'm never going to be relevant again. So that's just an equation. And after the pandemic, I had 100,000 followers before the pandemic. And then when all of this mob mentality started, I was deplatformed and I had to start all over again. And I had to begin again. And I had to think to myself, well, I already started my life over again. So now starting these new platforms over again, how would I do that? And so then that's when I said, I'm going to put that old life of being a comedian behind me now. That was a different person. That person died. And this person was born new. What does this person want to do? And the city became my muse. It became the excitement that got me up every day. It still does. I'm so excited about what's happening in Detroit. I'm like going, oh, I hope I'm alive in the spring so that I can see it. That's how, and for someone like me, people will tell you, I mean, I lost my funny. That's the worst thing that can happen to a comedian. I lost it.
Oh, damn.
You know, I lost it. And I didn't know if I would ever find that again, be happy and be funny again. And so the thing that defines you once you lose it, man, to find that again, whew, you know, comedy gave me
Oh,
peace
yeah.
going on stage and unleashing and letting go. And once you don't have
Mhm.
that, man, that's a place in the abyss that I don't wish on anybody. So
Yeah,
that's why
I can hear that.
rebuilding in this way and using vlogging and trying to show people, especially at my age, how vlogging isn't what you're thinking about like kids do. You
Mhm.
can look at vlogging as this art form where you're
Mhm.
looking for the best shot, the best picture, and the best representation of yourself, just like any Las Vegas artist would do. You know, this is your, think about what we live in. You got a portable movie studio in your pocket. In
Yeah,
your pocket.
that's
I
true.
mean, it's
True.
mind blowing. You guys are mind blown. You're mind fuck when I told you I do most of my editing on my phone. It
Yeah, I
has a
about shit
Yeah.
myself when you
terabyte.
said that because I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
dude, do
hard
you know
drive on it.
how much time I would
That
save
means
having to?
that means
Yeah.
all those moments in my day where everybody else is playing a puzzle video game or
Mhm.
got it gambling, chasing after whatever it is that they're trying
Mhm.
to chase after in order to quiet their mind. I'm just creating art. I'm creating digital art for myself. I don't care if one person watches it or 10,000 people watch it. This is
Looks
about
pretty good.
me being a better artist and being the most complete artist that I can be with all the skills that I've learned over time. And that's what all
So
this is. It's
so
taking
why
all those
did they,
skills and bringing them all together into one art form.
deplatform you, or did they tell you?
No, they don't tell you.
Okay.
I don't
So they
know.
did the
I
same thing
think
to me. They kicked
I'll
me
tell
off
you what
of,
I think it was. I'll
Instagram
tell
and
you what I
Facebook.
think. Yeah, I think it was when they murdered that guy in New York. They bagged him. They bagged him, and
Uh-huh.
they held their knee on his neck, and they killed him in the snow in New York. I forget his name, but that moment for me was a moment that I just wow. I made so many videos about that, and then I got warned about those videos. It's just
Mm.
like if people were making George Floyd videos at the peak of all
Yeah.
that happening.
Mhm.
And so I just kept, you know, I'm just like, you're not going to shut me up. I'm not going to stop doing this. I just kept doing it. And then I just woke up one day and everything was gone. I mean, my name is Kirkland Noland on Facebook now because they took my name from me. Done. You can't even use this name anymore. You're finished. So
Wow.
I just started over with a new name, new platforms, created everything new, and again decided, okay, what do I want to do now? What is it that I want to do? I've been working for other people trying to create shows in LA, running through that whole monstrous system, and what I wanted now was peace. And I was like, well, how am I going to get that? Well, I'll just do something that I know I'm good at. I'll start building a new show.
Mhm.
And once Detroit started to grow so much after the pandemic, it just became a muse that I could not turn my head away from. I was just like, why is nobody talking about this? We were the murder capital, and now we're one of the greatest cities you could ever want to come to. I'm going to start talking about this and building a show about this. And now this is my 7th year. November 19th will be my 8th year. And I told my friends, this is the first year I actually, you hear me how much I'm talking right now? The
Oh,
first
yeah.
year, I couldn't talk past a stutter. I couldn't, my brain would just click off and I would
Oh.
forget what I was talking to you about. And I'd have to ask you to remind me what we were talking about so that I could start over again and
Mhm.
start piecing that conversation together again. So what you're seeing now is just all of these years of time working in front of the camera. It's my babysitter, my lover, my best friend every day. Like if I feel, because I'm not on drugs anymore, not on those psychotropic drugs they had me on.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
you I, you want to hear something really fucking crazy?
Sure.
After I tried to kill myself because of all those drugs that they had me on, that
Mhm.
pushed me down into that rabbit hole. When I came back out of that, of course, it's mandated that you have to go and see a psychiatrist in therapy now
Yeah.
Mhm.
that you've tried to kill yourself, right?
Yeah.
And here I am sitting with the therapist that really helped me devise this process. But in order to get drugs, you had to go see a psychiatrist. So that was my next step, to go see that woman. The woman who first prescribed me the Seroquel that I questioned when she prescribed it to me. And her answer was, after 2 weeks of coming back from this, how you doing on your medication, Kirk? I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Well, we're thinking about switching you and putting you on something different. Let's try something different. I went, are you out of your fucking mind? You just gave me drugs that pushed me so far into the rabbit hole that I killed myself. I'm lucky to be back. And now you want to start this whole formula of experimenting on me by handing me a different kind of drug that you don't know what that outcome will be. And that was the day I went, no, thank you. Fuck you. I'm going to fix myself. And I walked out of there. I never took one of their drugs again. Now, I don't recommend this to everybody because I don't think everybody has that kind of discipline to walk out and change themselves like I have. But that was the real changing moment for me. And I went, I'm getting off of these drugs. And I swapped all those drugs with medical marijuana and got myself a bike and started recording. And every time I got depressed, I followed the same pattern that I had worked with that therapist. And that was, I'll get in front of the camera. I'll let it all out. I tell people it's like grief when people get together and they release those balloons up into the sky.
Oh yeah.
Let go of that grief. I go, that's what vlogging as an art form is. When you look at it as an art form, it is letting go of all of these things that you have inside of you, talking to the camera, letting it go like professional, right? Or like I do, building content that requires a lot of skill set and a lot of artistic, a level of artistic achievement in order to do that. And then you're done and you release it like a balloon. You let go of it, all that stuff. Like now, during war, are you fucking kidding? I'm talking to the camera all the time because I'm like, I can't believe what's happening in our world right now. And we live in an echo chamber. You got to agree with that. We're living in an echo chamber. The monkey machine is just an echo chamber with a mob that just points at everybody they don't agree with. And so when you can start looking at it like an art form and looking at it in a healthy way, and I don't think people look at social media in a health, there's nothing healthy that's been happening from social media. So it's hard for people to look at the benefits of how it can help you. But when you're 60 and beyond,
you're using it kind of like therapy though. I
mean, when you're 60 and beyond and you've lost your career, you've lost everything, even if you weren't an entertainer, you know, the biggest percentage of people killing themselves, men over 50 and 60, gone. They're killing themselves because, you know, now they're at a stage in their life when all of this stuff is happening and they go, well, I can't be the provider for my family anymore. I'm not the big chief in charge now that everybody looks to. I can't solve all the problems that I used to be able to solve. And men fall into such deep depression and then they can't talk about it because we've been taught we can't talk about it. Man up, shut the fuck up and do what you're supposed to do to get through all that. And so, there's a lot of people who don't want to go to therapy. They think that means that they're weak-minded to go to therapy. So I told a lot of my friends, I'm going to find a way to take all of these disciplines that I've learned and bring them together into something that helps people to really understand that by keeping your mind and your hands busy at the same time, it's not a coincidence that one of the greatest quotes in history is idle hands are the devil's workshop. It's the truth. And so if you find an art form that will help you to keep your mind and your body in balance, then you're going to make it. You're going to get through all this. And right now, that's more important than any time in history. Well, I should say any time in history, any time in our history. I think now more than ever, with everything that's going on, I think people need to find that. And Detroit is becoming a place of self-reflection and peace, at least the Riverwalk and the parts of the city that they're building now, because they've become a place of neutrality for people. And I've seen that in other Riverwalks and other places around the world where when you build something so beautiful and something so nice like this, people start to see it as a place where they can come and have peace and be self-reflective. And because of that,
and not murder each other. So that
not murdering. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. because Detroit still has a lot of murder and a lot of crime in this town.
You're still the murder
So,
capital.
It's not the murder capital any longer, but we still have our share of crime here. And
Oh.
so and we have a lot of like blight, a lot of really rundown neighborhoods. You got to remember, Detroit was in bankruptcy. It was poor. I mean, it was on the verge of collapsing. This city was on the verge of collapsing. So to come back from all of that and to be reborn into what it is now, that's why I'm excited. And I'm so happy. I got 28 miles of stage now. Wow.
There you go. Yeah.
More than I could ever even imagine. So,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, I'm really excited about my life and about my life as an artist and the things that I'm presenting to people. And hopefully they will help some people to be able to come back out of that deep, dark hole that they're in right now since the pandemic.
Oh,
Yeah.
1 second right there.
So we got, I think you just looked it up. What was it? Jacksonville, Mississippi is now the murder capital.
Is
of
it?
the States.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought Mississippi. Wow.
So they moved it.
You know, at one point, Detroit.
I don't know.
At
You
one
think
point,
these are
Detroit
American-
beat out Caracas.
Jesus.
That's pretty good, beating out Caracas.
Yeah, we
Damn.
beat out Caracas at one point. We were considered more dangerous than Caracas, for God's sake.
So what's the life down there in Detroit where you're at? Like, what's it like? Is there a lot of stuff happening around?
Yeah, I mean, if people follow me, they're going to follow the videos that I make about the transformation of, because I'm recording not just my own personal history for my own mental health, but I'm recording the history of the city around me. And again, I stress that to people because I think people take for granted what they have in their pocket every day. They still call it a phone. It's not a phone, it's a computer. You have a computer in your pocket that connects you to everything, right? And so I'm recording the history of things that are changing in this city as it's growing and it's becoming bigger. So here are some of the things. First of all, we've been voted 2 years in a row the best riverfront in the whole nation.
Oh, wow.
And now Time Magazine just named Detroit one of the greatest destinations in the world. That's how remarkable this city has become. We are building the first international bridge that connects two countries in decades. The Gordie Howe International Bridge is being built and the pillars have went up now, and they're saying in the next 2 years, that bridge will be done. It will change the whole landscape of what's happening in Detroit now. When I interview people on the Riverwalk and throughout the city, and I ask them about what they're seeing, a lot of people say that Detroit reminds them now of Brooklyn in the early days.
Really?
And so if you can imagine,
nightlife.
yeah, if you can imagine Brooklyn in the early days as it was rising up and the bridges and the skyscrapers, and we're building 2 new skyscrapers in the city too.
I'm not old enough to remember.
Oh, okay. Well, no, just if you were a history buff, I'm sorry, if you were a history buff, then you would know about the history of New York and being early Brooklyn and how it rose up. But it's that thing, it's music, it's art. The art scene is really wonderful here. We're building that new bridge. We have 2 skyscrapers that are being built in downtown Detroit, which I don't know, a lot of skyscrapers being built in America, period. And one of the buildings is an innovation that's never been done before. They're building the building from the top down.
How the fuck?
Floor,
how do you do that? That doesn't sound possible.
They're using the pillars and the foundation as a way to raise up the floors and put them up. And so they're building the floors like complete with everything complete so that the workers and everybody don't have to work up on those heights, and they just lift it, hoist it, and put it in. And they're doing it with 50 workers. 50 workers building
That
it.
sounds like,
So
that's
they
a
have
really
2
big elevator.
Yeah. So they have 2 floors already done, building from the top down. So those are 2 major things happening here in Detroit that are like really exciting. And then they just opened up the first leg of what they're calling the Joe Louis Greenway, and that connects the suburbs coming into the city. And it's just remarkable. And I tell people when the bridge goes up, we'll have 2 bridges because we have the Ambassador Bridge that connects the 2 countries. And
Yeah.
now they just signed, I don't know, something like $100 billion deal between the two countries for trade. And so I tell people in the next 2 years, when the bridge really starts to come together and starts to happen, this place is going to explode like you've never seen before. And so for me, as a comedian, former comedian, and as an artist who's
Mhm.
built a number of shows over the years and been a producer who's built a number of shows over the years in LA, I just looked around and went, wow, no one's doing this. And I finally
Yeah.
feel healthy enough to do it myself. And now I have the tools that I don't need a crew. I don't need anything anymore. I mean, you can do everything from your phone now. So I'm just going to build a one-man band show from the Riverwalk. I've been doing it because I've been in production the last couple of years doing it, mapping out the Riverwalk, the city, everything. Because all these elements were difficult to figure out. Like, how do you ride a bike on the streets of Detroit with all the roads that are so terrible here? How do you do that and keep your footage smooth? How do
Yeah.
you do that and have nice smooth footage that people are going to want to watch? And so it's been a whole process of figuring out a point of view, figuring out how to describe the city, figuring out how to talk about it, figuring out how to get other people to enjoy it with me. Like recently, I just came up, just like a comedian, you're coming up with ideas and lines that are going to work every time. The hard part about doing it in this medium is you have to trust yourself, because there's nobody there that's telling you that you're doing a good job, that you're putting a good show together. You guys know that, right? The only
Yeah,
people who are
yeah.
telling you anything, the only people who are telling
That's
you
true.
anything are the fucking haters, man. They're the ones
Just
trying
the
to tone you
voices in
down.
my head telling me that I'm a piece of shit. That's what
Yeah.
happens to me.
Yeah.
So, but that's part of growing as an artist. That's part of growing and coming to a place where you've got people have said to me, well, when do you know you're a headliner? I go, when you realize you've got more ammunition than the audience. When you
Yeah.
realize you have more to pull from than anything they're ever going to say to you, because you've been doing this for so long and you have run into just about every situation that you can. And even if you don't have something for that situation in your archive, in your hard drive, you'll pull something out, because every situation becomes just like the last situation. You guys know this from doing it.
Oh yeah.
So when you have more ammunition than the audience, that's when you're ready to move into headliner territory, because that's when you'll be confident enough to handle any situation that comes your way. Like a blind guy in the front row, which I had one time. A blind guy in the front row with his fucking back to me in the front row. So what would you say as a comedian? Hey, why don't you turn around and watch the fucking show? What, are you blind or something? You can't pay attention to what's going on? And somebody yells out, yeah, he's blind.
Oh,
And
fuck.
I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
Who is punking me today?
The only thing that would be worse is if he was deaf.
Oh, fuck. God damn it.
Which
All
begs the
right.
question: why would you come to a comedy show if you're deaf?
He wants to feel the vibrations. Maybe that's the only way he can
The
come.
laughter, feel the vibrations.
Maybe that's the
of
only way he
laughter.
can come. He has to feel like laughter vibrations.
That could be.
I don't know.
Could be. I don't
I'm
know.
just
And I want to tell your listeners, everything that I'm saying right now, this is something that is going to happen in one way or another to every artist that's listening to me right now.
Oh yeah.
Every artist that's listening to me right now is going to have some kind of catastrophic change that changes the way that they see their art. It's inevitable. Even if it's a good catastrophic change, like going from being a headliner to being a star. That's a catastrophic change of epic proportions that no matter how much you think you got your noodle wrapped around that, you don't. You don't at all. Nobody really does. It's like being a parent. No one's got their noodle wrapped around their head about being a parent. It's just you just hope that you've like trained yourself well enough that you're going to be better at it than your parents were. That's all. That's all you can hope for. And you got to just do the best that you can. And over time, redefine that process, refine it over and over and over again. I say this all the time. The master is the master, not because he knows everything. It's because the master has lost his fear of change. And he has now understood that the kata is not about self-defense or about attack or about war or anything else. It's about redefining the method over and over and over again to find more perfection in the process than you had before. It's what separates the great comedians from the amateur comedians. It's the people who are striving to hit a place that nobody else has ever been to. Richard Pryor set himself on fire. I mean, who would ever think of setting yourself on fire? You got to be out of your mind to do that. But what made him one of the greatest artists that ever lived is that he came back and talked about that fucking thing.
Oh yeah, he did.
He talked about it.
Yeah.
He laid it all out on the fucking table and just said to people, yeah, here it is. Here's what I did. And he made it funny. He made you laugh at it. Holy shit. Like, I mean, I don't even know anybody who could do what he did today, who could do that and come back out of that. So I just, that's what defines really great artists. And I think what stops people from vlogging is this narrative that's been fed to us over and over and throughout the time that social media has been going on. And that is to vlog, to take pictures of yourself, to take video of yourself is some kind of level of narcissism that is wrong. It turns people, there's articles about this all the time that pops up on social media. People who are, and you see it in people who are vlogging today, this narcissistic group of young people who don't see this as any other way than to present this narcissistic form of themselves. But we've all are narcissistic when it comes to entertainers. We're all in this boat. And as an artist, once people realize artists, I mean, look at great art. All the great artists, they self-painted themselves, self-portraits. Andy Warhol took pictures of himself, right? All great artists. I mean, actors record themselves, you know, take pictures of themselves. I mean, this is something that you do because you're trying to deeply look into yourself. And I can tell you as an editor over the years, I've said this to other people who are trying to become good editors, learn to edit yourself because you are your worst enemy, worst. And you will not edit yourself the way you'll edit somebody else. And when you can come to a place of acceptance of yourself, you'll become 10 times the editor and video producer than you ever were before. Because once you can edit yourself, you can edit anybody.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
The voices in my head disagree, but I can see that. I can see that.
Kirk, I appreciate you being on, man. Can you give everybody the deets to where to find you and find your show and all of that, man, before we head out?
Yeah, well, I sent you a Linktree link that you can probably post for everybody. That gets everybody to all the different groups that I'm now building that shows Detroit through these 3 different lenses. And then all of those come together in forming what I call vlogumentaries, and that is vlogs in documentary form. And so once I build a number of sequences, then I put those together into hour episodes that are really vlogumentaries, that are really documentaries of this life that I am living and being reborn in the city of Phoenix, is one of the greatest cities on the planet now, Detroit. It's funny to say it. And I'm so happy when people here in Detroit are so happy to say it, because like I said, we've been down in the dumps for so long and been called the murder capital. It's good to be proud of your city again, you know, really good to be proud of that and be proud to come. And so that's why I liked it when you said you were so proud of where you come from, because you don't hear that a lot from people anymore. And I want to instill that.
You mean where I live right now?
Yeah. He's talking about.
Yeah, I love Springfield, dude. I don't think I've never said that before.
That's nice. And that's nice, especially from someone who come from another country to go, yeah, I chose this because of these reasons. And I love it here. I really love it here. And I like to see that. You don't see it a lot anymore with all the madness and chaos that we're living in today. So bravo for you.
You learn to appreciate things. But man, I appreciate you for
Thank
being
you
around.
guys.